Today we're going to be talking about my biggest pet peeve in cloud gaming, and while I will only be focusing on my two favorite platforms, Google Stadia and GeForce NOW, there's something I could bring up about every single one of them. So what exactly is the annoyance? Well, it's inconsistency, something that is a pretty hot topic within the GFN community at the moment, and one that I think should be brought up by the Stadia community. But before I begin and get to explaining what's going on, I want to point out that neither company is actually breaking any promise here or any sort of deal that they offered. In my honest opinion, that doesn't make what's going on alright, but I will do a follow-up video if we ever get an official statement or reasoning as to what's going on. Now let's address the elephant in the room and what is probably the hottest topic of the week in the cloud gaming space, and that's GeForce NOW founders and priority members having a frame rate cap. Based on what I've been reading, it appears to only be affecting newer titles like Guardians of the Galaxy and Cyberpunk 2077, and it is also worth pointing out that 3080 tiers don't have any sort of frame rate cap whatsoever. Obviously, this has caused some people to theorize that maybe Nvidia is trying to push users toward the new 3080 tier, or that they're just trying to cut corners to save some cost. And you know what? They're a business like any other. I wouldn't be surprised to see that's the case, but frankly speaking, until we get an official statement, it's all conjecture at this point. For all we know, this could be a server-side bug or something that they're doing when it comes to transitioning into the superpods. Then again, if that were the case, you probably would have heard something by now. This has been a topic being discussed since last week, and they've been pretty silent on that front. Another reason they could choose to be silent right now is because they simply don't think they need to address this as an issue whatsoever. And that's because the priorities here specifically states that it's always offered up to 60 FPS. Those two words, up to, are a bit of a crux in this entire discussion because they'll also come up on the Stadia side of things, but more on that later. Those two little words give a lot of flexibility to these companies. They don't have to actually provide you with the capability of 60 FPS because you're only promised up to 60 FPS. That could simply be 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or anything in between. So when you boot up Cyberpunk and your frame rate capped at 45 FPS, well, guess what? You're playing at up to 60 FPS. Nothing's changed as part of the deal. To be very clear, I'm not a fan of this, and I'm not trying to defend them whatsoever. I don't like what they're doing here, but it is important to see this from the business point of view. And that's because cloud gaming is going to be handled extremely differently. After all, we're not owners of the hardware we're playing on. And what that means is that changes like this can happen to a service we're subscribed to, and frankly speaking, we just gotta deal with it. What gets to me more as a content creator is the fact that there are a ton of GeForce NOW videos out there of us playing games at 60 FPS that are no longer really representative of the experience. What sucks even more is that we weren't lying in those videos because that was our experience at the time, but it seems like that's now changed. Either way, I sincerely hope that Nvidia does release an official statement on this matter. I think it'd be really good for them to do so, even if they're not planning on reverting things back to the way they used to be. A lot of the users are reasonably upset, and I think they're owed an explanation. I really do. And I say that as someone who loves the GeForce NOW service and really can't praise the 3080 tier enough. And now let's switch over to Google Stadia and talk about another inconsistent problem, and that's the phrase up to 4K. And I'm not talking about games natively running in 4K, I'm talking about the streams. Two very recent examples come to mind, and that's Saints Row 4 Re-elected as well as Mafia 3. It doesn't help that they're both older titles that Stadia's hardware should have no problem dealing with, but besides that fact, having to stream at 1080p means you're reducing the bitrate of your video feed and therefore introducing more issues like compression. On top of that, if you're playing on a monitor or display that runs on a higher native resolution, well, you're gonna even notice those issues more so. It really doesn't make for a great visual experience, and that's something I've always praised Stadia on. Even if the games didn't run at 60 FPS, I could always trust that visually speaking they look sharp. It's also why I've always advocated for Chrome extensions like Stadia Enhanced, because even if you're on a 1080p display, if you force 4K resolution, you're gonna notice the increase in bitrate and it'll look better than it does at 1080p. It should be noted that these aren't the only two games that are affected like this. For example, Grime is yet another title that doesn't support 4K streaming. Now, what I'm about to say is complete conjecture, but I do remember hearing something along the lines that this has to do with Google trying to secure more games on the platform quicker. But once again, without an official word from from Google on this matter, it's just a theory. Whatever the case may be here, it does suck. Paying for Stadia Pro to get those 4K streams was kind of a big deal for me. If you've been a fan of this channel, you know that I've always praised Stadia's image quality. It's always been very sharp because it streams at a higher bitrate than any other cloud gaming platform. I just hope these cases of outliers don't end up becoming a norm going forward, because it seems to be happening a little more often. And based on how long Grime and Mafia 3 have been available, I doubt that they're going to be patching it in anytime soon, if ever. Now, these are just two cases of inconsistencies I really dislike in both Stadia and GeForce NOW. But other cloud gaming platforms also do this sort of thing. What I'm trying to get at with this video is that with cloud gaming, it's a new frontier, and it comes with its own new set of problems. Companies absolutely can change the status quo of what we're used to and what we've set our expectations to. And the way these deals are worded, well, it gives them the right to do and make these changes without any sort of repercussions. As users and consumers of these services and products, I absolutely think we should be talking about it and bringing it up when the community isn't happy. Being outspoken is the type of thing that tends to work within these scenarios, but only if there's enough people actually talking about it. And as someone who has some sort of voice within this community, I don't want to be ignoring these problems either. With this video, I've shared my own personal thoughts, but I do want to know all of yours, so feel free to leave them down in the comments section below. Do you think people are reasonably angry about this, or do you think they're just complaining way too much? Whatever your stance may be, I would love to hear it down below. Now, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful at all, be sure to hit that like button, as it really does help the channel out. And if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. As always, this has been The Virtual Cloud, giving you the latest and greatest on everything cloud gaming and VR related, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.